What happens when a daytime talk show, known for polite disagreements and measured debates, suddenly turns into a stage for something far more raw, far more personal, and impossible to ignore? The studio lights of The View burned a little brighter that morning. The audience settled into their seats, buzzing with anticipation, unaware that they were about to witness a moment that would ripple far beyond the walls of the set. Cameras rolled. Smiles were exchanged. The familiar theme music faded. And then, she walked out. Taraji P. Henson. Confident. Composed. But if you looked closely, really closely, there was something else beneath the surface. Something simmering. Before we dive into this intense moment, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, and drop a comment right now, because on the Viral Breakdown, we don't just tell stories, we take you inside them. Taraji took her seat, exchanging greetings with the hosts. Joy Behar leaned slightly forward, her signature smile in place, eyes sharp with curiosity. The conversation began as expected, light, easy, almost rehearsed. A discussion about Taraji's latest project, her career, her impact. But tension has a way of creeping in quietly. And you've been very vocal lately, Joy began, tilting her head just slightly, her tone hovering between inquisitive and challenging. Especially about how the industry treats women like you. Taraji smiled, but it wasn't the kind that reached her eyes. Well, I've always been vocal, she replied, her voice calm, measured. It's just that now, people are finally listening. A ripple of soft laughter moved through the audience. But Joy didn't laugh. Yes, Joy continued, leaning back in her chair, crossing her arms. But some people feel that maybe it's not just about the industry. Maybe it's about choices. The air shifted. Taraji's expression changed, just slightly. A flicker, a tightening around the eyes. The kind of micro-expression that most would miss, but not everyone. Choices. Taraji repeated, her voice quieter now. Sharper. Joy nodded, pressing forward. Yes, the roles you take, the projects you align with. Sometimes, isn't it also about what you choose to accept? The audience went still. For a moment, it felt like time slowed down. Cameras zoomed in. The co-hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Something had just crossed an invisible line. Taraji leaned forward. You mean to tell me, she said, her voice now carrying a weight that silenced the room, that after decades in this industry, after everything I've done, everything I've had to fight for, you think I'm just choosing wrong? Her words didn't just land, they echoed. Joy opened her mouth, perhaps to clarify, perhaps to soften, but Taraji wasn't finished. Because that's interesting, she continued, her tone steady but laced with emotion. It's always about choices when it comes to women like me. Never about the system. Never about the doors that stay closed no matter how hard you knock. A murmur moved through the audience now. Some nodded. Others exchanged glances. Joy raised her hands slightly. I'm not saying that. But that's exactly what it sounds like, Taraji cut in, her voice rising just enough to command attention. And I'm tired of that narrative. The other hosts leaned in, sensing the shift. One of them tried to interject. Let's unpack that. But the moment had already taken on a life of its own. Taraji sat back, exhaling slowly, as if trying to regain control. But the emotion was there now, visible, undeniable. You know what people don't see, she said, softer now, but no less intense. They don't see the negotiations, the pay gaps, the constant fight just to be valued. They see the end result and think, oh, she chose that. Joy's expression softened slightly, but there was still a hint of resistance. I understand it's difficult, she said carefully, but every actor faces challenges. Taraji's eyes locked onto hers. Not like this, she said. Silence. Not the kind of silence that fills space, but the kind that demands attention. The audience wasn't just watching anymore. They were feeling it. You don't walk into a room and have to prove your worth before you even speak, Taraji continued, her voice steady but emotional. You don't have to question whether you're being undervalued because of something you can't change. Joy shifted in her seat, visibly taken aback. Well, and I'm not here to play nice about it anymore, Taraji added, her tone firm now. I've done that. I've smiled. I've been grateful. I've accepted less. And for what? A few audience members clapped, hesitantly at first, then louder. The tension was no longer subtle. It was front and center. Joy inhaled, preparing to respond, her composure slipping just slightly. I think what I'm trying to say is, but you need to understand what it sounds like, Taraji interrupted again, her gaze unwavering. Because words matter, especially when they come from platforms like this. The cameras caught everything. The tightening jaws, the shifting eyes, the unspoken reactions of the co-hosts who now found themselves caught in the middle of something far bigger than a typical daytime discussion. One of them leaned forward, attempting to redirect. Taraji, your passion is clear, Anne. This isn't just passion, Taraji said, turning slightly toward her. This is reality. Another wave of murmurs spread through the audience. Joy leaned forward again, her tone now more defensive than before. No one is denying your experience. But you're minimizing it, Taraji shot back. That was the moment. The moment where the conversation stopped being a conversation and became something else entirely. Something raw. Something real. Something that couldn't be edited out or smoothed over. The studio felt smaller now. Tighter. Every word carried weight. Every pause felt loaded. And as Taraji sat there, eyes locked, voice steady, it became clear. This wasn't just about one comment. This was about years. Years of frustration. Of being misunderstood. Of being told, subtly, repeatedly, that maybe the problem wasn't the system, maybe it was her. And for the first time on that stage, she wasn't letting that narrative stand. Not today. Not anymore. Silence didn't break all at once. It cracked. You could feel it in the way the audience shifted, in the way the co-hosts avoided eye contact, in the way the energy inside the studio turned from controlled television rhythm into something unpredictable, something real. Taraji didn't look away. Her gaze stayed locked on Joy, steady and unshaken, as if this wasn't just a conversation anymore, but a moment that had been building for years. Joy adjusted in her seat, forcing a small smile that didn't quite land. I think we're getting a little off track here, she said, trying to regain control. We're talking about a complex industry, and I'm simply saying. But that's the problem, Taraji cut in, her voice calm but firm. It always becomes complex when we start getting close to the truth. A ripple moved through the audience, murmurs, a few claps, tension rising. One of the co-hosts leaned forward. Let's just slow down for a second. No, Taraji said, lifting her hand slightly. Because this is what always happens. The moment it gets uncomfortable, we pause, and then nothing changes. Her words landed hard. Joy's expression tightened. No one is trying to silence you, she replied, her tone more direct now. But there's a way to have these conversations without turning it into something real. Taraji asked, leaning forward. The audience reacted louder this time, applause mixed with gasps. Joy shook her head. You're putting words in my mouth. Taraji responded instantly. No, I'm responding to what I heard. There was a pause. A long one. The kind that makes live TV feel dangerous. You said it's about choices, Taraji continued, her voice controlled now, more precise than before. Let me tell you what those choices actually look like. She leaned back slightly, speaking with intention. A script comes in. The role is underdeveloped. The pay is lower than others. But you're told, this is a big opportunity. The room went quiet. So you take it, she said. Because you've been taught to be grateful. To not complain. She looked directly at Joy. And then when you finally speak up, suddenly it's not about the system anymore. It's about your choices. That word hung in the air. Joy hesitated for the first time. A co-host stepped in carefully. I think what Joy is trying to say is there are different perspectives. And I respect that, Taraji said quickly. But respecting perspectives doesn't mean ignoring lived experiences. The audience clapped, louder now, more confident. Joy leaned forward again, feeling the shift. No one is ignoring you, she insisted. But this show is about discussion, hearing all sides. Taraji nodded slowly. Then discussion also requires accountability. Joy frowned. Accountability for what? For the narratives we push, Taraji replied. For the way things are framed. Because words matter, especially here. The tension spread across the stage. You have millions of viewers, Taraji continued. So when it sounds like you're saying someone like me is where I am because of choices, that matters. That's not what I said, Joy responded quickly. But it's how it came across, Taraji said, calm but firm. And perception matters just as much as intention. That line hit differently. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. Sometimes, she said, a bit sharper now, people hear what they want to hear. A mixed reaction from the audience, some nods, some disagreement. Taraji didn't hesitate. Or maybe, she said quietly. They hear what they've been told over and over again, in different ways, until it becomes impossible to ignore. Silence again. Heavier this time. You know what's exhausting, she added, her voice softer now. Having to explain your reality again and again, and still being told you're overreacting. The audience responded instantly. Strong applause. Joy glanced at the crowd, then back at Taraji. Her confidence was still there, but now, there was a hint of uncertainty. I don't think you're overreacting, Joy said more quietly. I just think. But you questioned the root of it, Taraji said gently, cutting in, but this time, with less intensity. And that's what I'm addressing. The tone had shifted. Still tense, but more focused. One of the co-hosts leaned forward again. This clearly means a lot, she said carefully. And I think what we're seeing is real conversation, Taraji finished. For a moment, it felt like things might settle. Like the storm had reached its peak. Taraji leaned back slightly, exhaling. But then, Joy leaned forward again. Her tone changed. More direct. More pointed. But let me ask you this, she said, locking eyes with Taraji. If the system is as broken as you say it is, why stay in it? The audience gasped. Everything froze. Because everyone in that room knew. That question just changed everything. And Taraji? She didn't answer. Not immediately. She just stayed at Joy. And in that silence, the tension didn't fade. It doubled. The question didn't just hang in the air. It pressed down on everyone in the room. If the system is as broken as you say it is, why stay in it? For a split second, it felt like time stopped. The audience leaned forward. The co-hosts went completely still. Even the usual background noise of the studio seemed to disappear. And Taraji? She didn't react the way people expected. No immediate comeback. No raised voice. Just stillness. She looked at Joy, her expression unreadable at first. Then slowly, very slowly, she exhaled. Not out of defeat, but out of restraint. You really want to know why I stay? She asked quietly. Joy nodded, holding her ground. I think it's a fair question. Taraji tilted her head slightly, as if weighing whether to answer honestly or strategically. Then she leaned forward. I stay, she said, her voice calm but carrying something deeper now, because I had to fight too hard to get here, to just walk away. The audience reacted softly, murmurs, a few nods. I stay because there are people watching me, she continued, her eyes briefly scanning the crowd. People who look like me, who are trying to get in, who need to see that it's possible. Her voice didn't rise, but the emotion did. If I leave, she added, what message does that send? Joy listened, but her expression remained firm. But doesn't staying also mean you're participating in something you believe is unfair? There it was again. That push. That challenge. Taraji nodded slowly, as if she had expected that angle. Absolutely, she said. And that's the contradiction. A pause. But change doesn't come from the outside, she continued. It comes from people inside the system, pushing back. The audience clapped, this time more unified, more confident. I'm not here because it's easy, Taraji added. I'm here because it's necessary. That line hit hard. Joy leaned back slightly, absorbing it, but she wasn't done. I understand the idea of staying to create change, she said, her tone measured. But at what point do you decide it's not worth it anymore? The question felt different this time. Less confrontational. More probing. Taraji's eyes softened just a little. You think I haven't asked myself that, she replied, almost with a hint of a tired smile. There are days, a lot of days, where I wonder if it's worth the fight. The room grew quieter. More personal now. More human. But then I remember, she continued, her voice steady again, every door that was shut in my face. Every no that didn't make sense. Every time I had to prove something that others didn't. She paused. And I realize, if I stop now, all of that was for nothing. A wave of applause broke out. Not loud and chaotic, but strong. Respectful. Joy nodded slightly, acknowledging the weight of what was being said. I hear that, she said. I really do. But there was still tension. Still something unresolved. But let me ask you this, Joy continued, leaning forward again. Do you think sometimes, the way these conversations are framed publicly, can push people away instead of bringing them in? The room shifted again. A different kind of tension now. Taraji didn't answer immediately. She looked down for a moment, just a brief second, then back up. If speaking honestly pushes people away, she said slowly. Then maybe they were never really listening to begin with. The audience reacted instantly. Applause, louder than before. Joy's lips pressed together. That's one way to look at it, she replied. It's the truth, Taraji said, her tone firmer now. Because for a long time, the conversations were comfortable, polished, easy to digest. She leaned forward again. And what did that change? Silence. No one answered. Because no one could. Taraji continued, her voice gaining intensity again, but controlled, deliberate. Nothing changes until it gets uncomfortable, she said. Until people are forced to sit in something they'd rather avoid. A co-host nodded slowly, clearly feeling the weight of that statement. Joy crossed her arms again, but this time it didn't feel defensive. It felt reflective. So what you're saying, Joy said carefully, is that discomfort is necessary. Taraji gave a small nod. Growth doesn't happen in comfort, she replied. Another pause. But this one felt different. Less tense. More thoughtful. For a brief moment, it seemed like the conversation had found its balance. Like both sides were beginning to understand each other, at least a little. But then, a voice from the audience broke through. Say that again. The crowd laughed lightly, tension easing just a fraction. Taraji smiled, just a little. But Joy didn't. She leaned forward one more time, her eyes focused, her tone now quieter, but sharper in a different way. Do you think, she asked slowly, that there's ever a risk that moments like this become more about the confrontation than the cause? The question landed differently. Not loud, not aggressive, but precise. The kind of question that forces reflection. Taraji's smile faded. She sat back, considering it. For the first time since the confrontation began, she didn't respond right away. The audience felt it. That shift. Because now, it wasn't just about defending a point. It was about something deeper. Something more complicated. Taraji looked at Joy, then at the audience, then back again. And when she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than it had been all segment. But somehow, it carried even more weight. If this moment makes people pay attention, she said slowly, then maybe the confrontation is part of the cause. Silence. Not awkward. Not tense. But heavy. Meaningful. Because in that moment, something had changed. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It wasn't just television. It had become something real. Something people would talk about long after the cameras stopped rolling. And as both women sat there, no longer interrupting, no longer pushing, you could feel it. The shift from conflict to impact. But the story? It wasn't over yet. The moment didn't end when the cameras cut. It lingered. Heavy. Unresolved. Echoing far beyond the studio walls. As the segment wrapped, the applause came. But it wasn't the usual bright, cheerful kind. It was laid. Mixed with emotion. Some stood. Some hesitated. Some simply sat there, processing what they had just witnessed. Taraji P. Henson adjusted slightly in her chair, her expression calmer now, but not lighter. Not relieved. If anything, it carried the quiet weight of someone who had just said something they'd been holding in for years. Joy Behar offered a small nod, the kind that sits somewhere between acknowledgement and uncertainty. There was no quick joke to smooth things over. No clean transition. Because there was no clean ending. Thank you for being here, one of the co-hosts said, her voice softer than usual, almost careful. Taraji gave a small smile. Thank you for having me. But even that felt different. Not performative. Not polished. Real. And then, the cameras cut. The lights dimmed slightly. And just like that, the broadcast ended. But the moment, it was just beginning. Backstage, the energy was completely different. Staff members moved quickly, whispering to each other. Producers checked their phones. Clips were already being pulled. Social media teams were preparing posts. Because everyone knew. This wasn't just another interview. This was going viral. Within minutes, the first clips hit platforms. Short, sharp segments of the confrontation. Taraji leaning forward, Joy asking that question, the silence that followed. And then, the internet did what it always does. It exploded. Comments flooded in faster than they could be read. Taraji spoke nothing but facts. Joy crossed a line. No, Joy asked a real question. This is what real conversation looks like. Debates ignited across timelines. Hashtags started trending. Reaction videos popped up almost instantly, people replaying the moment, pausing at key lines, analyzing every expression, every pause, every word. Some praised Taraji for her honesty, her courage, her refusal to soften her truth. Others defended Joy, saying she was doing her job, asking difficult questions, representing a perspective that many viewers were thinking but not saying out loud. And then there were those caught in the middle, people who weren't choosing sides, but were feeling something, because the conversation had tapped into something deeper than just one moment on a talk show. It had exposed a tension that had always been there, quiet, unspoken. Until now, clips of Taraji's words, "Nothing changes until it gets uncomfortable," began circulating everywhere. On captions, on reposts, on headlines. News outlets picked it up within hours. Explosive moment on The View. Taraji P. Henson claps back live on air. Debate or breakdown. Inside the tense exchange everyone is talking about. Panels were formed. Opinions were shared. Experts weighed in. But the most powerful reactions, they weren't from studios. They were from people. People who saw themselves in what was said. People who had felt unheard, misunderstood, simplified into something smaller than their reality. And suddenly, they were speaking too. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, reports began to surface. Some said the conversation continued after the cameras stopped rolling, that there was a quieter exchange between Taraji and Joy, less intense, more reflective. Others claimed the tension carried backstage, that voices were raised, that producers had to step in, that the moment didn't end as calmly as it appeared. No one knew the full truth. And maybe that was the point, because the mystery only fueled the moment more. Days passed, but the conversation didn't fade. It grew. Clips turned into discussions. Discussions turned into think pieces. Think pieces turned into ongoing debates about media, representation, accountability, and truth. Even celebrities began weighing in, subtle posts, indirect comments, carefully worded support or critique. And through it all, one thing remained clear. That moment mattered. Not because it was perfect, not because it was comfortable, but because it was real. Back on set, the next episode of The View felt different. The energy had shifted. The hosts addressed the moment briefly, acknowledging the reaction, the conversation it sparked. But they didn't recreate it. They couldn't. Because moments like that don't happen on command. They happen when something real breaks through. And Taraji? She didn't release a long statement. She didn't try to control the narrative. She simply let the moment stand. Unfiltered. Unedited. Powerful. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't need explanation. It just needs to be heard. And for those who watched it unfold live, for those who felt the tension, the silence, the weight of every word, it wasn't just another segment. It was something they wouldn't forget. So now we turn it to you. What did you think about that moment? Was Taraji right to stand her ground? Did Joy ask a fair question? Or did the conversation reveal something bigger than both of them? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading everything. And if you want more deep, dramatic breakdowns of the moments everyone is talking about, make sure you subscribe to the Viral Breakdown, hit that like button, and stay tuned. Because the next story might be even bigger.